Speaking moistly.
Moistly.
Keep 2
Keep
meters
2
apart.
meters apart. Speaking moistly.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Speaking Moistly on Tuesday with Greg, as usual. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm highly caffeinated, and I am one with the chaos.
I drink uncaffeinated Diet Coke, so I do not have any caffeine in me. It ruins my chill, and I like to be chill.
Okay. Do you have any other controlled substances in her? You don't have to answer that.
No, we're not discussing that right now.
Okay.
So in the green room, well, I mean, controlled stuff, like you're talking marijuana, that's not even controlled. That's a prescription medication.
Right. It's a medicine.
Right. I mean, and there's so many other prescription medications out there that are worse. Fentanyl, right? Let's not talk about safe injection sites, right? Canada's encouraging that. And if did you hear about this? We were going to start on something else, but we'll talk about this really quick. Did you hear that Toronto wants to decriminalize all sorts of drugs, like everything, decriminalize all drugs because reasons?
I did not hear that.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah. Yesterday it was a news article on Today's Show, and I can't remember which level of government was talking about this, but maybe it's the city of Toronto. They just want to decriminalize all drugs because drugs being a crime is discriminatory or anything. But if you want ivermectin, we're going to make fun of you for being a horse.
Yeah. It's okay if you want to, have a self-destructive relationship with yourself and kill yourself with
meth, sure.
Heroin, all sorts of fun stuff. But ivermectin, a drug where you
holy cow,
somebody won a Nobel Prize, I believe,
a Nobel Horse Prize.
But that stuff's not allowed. Actually, we're not allowed to distribute that stuff because that might save your life.
Holy cow!
Not good.
I mean, it's not meth, and it's
it's not meth. Yeah, it's not.
How many horses?
Boring. Don't want to hear that.
How many horses are on meth?
Speaking of safe injection sites,
okay.
Is it you who told me? Someone told me that the inventor of safe injection sites overdosed.
Really?
Or maybe the person who introduced it in BC. I don't know how the story goes. I remember hearing that, but
no, I didn't tell you that story. I don't. That's a shame. I mean, people dying of overdoses is a shame, and it's even worse when society themselves has convinced themselves that providing drugs for addicts is a pathway out of addiction, and banning a safe medication like ivermectin from people who it could help seems to be a draconian, an evil thing to do, especially in context of the pandemic. But
yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of that goes on, this sort of weird encouragement of mental illness, or like perpetuating mental illness in a sense.
Well, the prime minister, Justin Trudeau, will often tweet out like, it's okay to not be okay. This is a kind of been a trope of the past 2 years, right? Like it's okay to not be okay. And sure, it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to have mental health issues. People have mental health issues. It's okay to have all sorts of things. People live with all sorts of terrible things that happen, right? But making it normal or normalizing it as like, you should be able to deal with your life. You know what I mean? Like you should be able to meet your life and the challenges that are within your life, and you should be able to overcome those challenges to a certain degree. And like the world should not be a place that overwhelms you, but it seems like they're encouraging this kind of crippling, like it's okay to not be okay and just sob in a corner and suck your thumb. And it's like,
Yeah. And probably the biggest exaggeration of that point is lethal injections coming, I think, within the next 2 years, where they're going to change the laws in Canada, where if you say, hey, I have mental illness, I have enough mental illness, and I do want to end my life, they'll be like, Canadian government will give you the thumbs up.
Haven't they already done that? I thought that was.
I think the decision's been made, but it's not going to be until effective.
It hasn't been implemented yet.
It has not been officially implemented yet. And I'm pretty sure the major point is, you can euthanize yourself with the reason of mental illness, like coming to a town near you.
Yeah. How far away is that? So like I've seen video footage of nurses and doctors, or people representing nurses and people representing the hospital. So I don't know if it was a nurse or a doctor who was doing this, but a patient who could not care for themselves, so was in hospital because there was no room in long-term care, and they couldn't be discharged home because they didn't have anybody to look after them. they were trying to encourage this patient to kill themselves, to go through medically assisted dying. And he said, I don't want to die. I want you to send me home with support. I want you to send me home with somebody who can help me. Like,
Yeah.
right. I'm not
That's
like
twisted.
right. And so how long before that statement is deemed, well, he's just not, he's clearly not with it, right? Like he obviously means that he wants to die, right? Not that he wants help at home, like, right?
Yeah.
So how long before that, right? And so, and does that seem unlikely? Well, it seems like they're trying to implement a kind of um, a situation where you willfully walk into it, not a situation where they're putting people in uh, ovens or anything like that, right? To compare directly with the Holocaust, but I think they're trying to set the stage for like life's so hard, and we know that it's bad. So by the time you're 55 and you're no longer working productively, just time to take that final jab and go off into heaven or wherever you want to believe.
That's really twisted to suggest that, but I think on a mental like demoralization level, that's like already happening.
That's what I mean, right?
I remember Christmas time last year. Last year. Was it last year? No, it was 2 Christmases ago, right before the pandemic. And so many of my young friends or family members were like, yeah, well, I'm never having kids because climate change. And it's like, okay, so you don't want to live, you don't want to continue like, and like just that's just an example of the kind of mood or tone that people have. And it says a lot. Like, we could talk for hours on that phenomena of people not wanting to procreate anymore.
Yep. It's very interesting because I don't think there's anything better. And like, I mean, right? Wink, wink, nudge. But having having the kid and actually being involved in their growing up and then their development. I just got
that now.
All right.
It took me like 20 seconds.
Nothing better. But no, really, like, I think that's the meaning. I honestly believe that that's the meaning of life. And I mean, that's partially a Jordan Peterson-ism. Like, he's talked about investing in other people. Like, if you don't have kids, then if you have a niece or a nephew or somebody like that to invest in.
Which is just from Christian Bible, baby. It's from the Bible. It's from God. But if you break it down into a more kind of superficial, kind of practical, like easily accessible sense, what are you living for? Like, believe it or not, the evil in the world and all that's going on, I feel like this gives me a lot of purpose into like fight against evil and try to leave the world in a better state than when I got here. Right. And there's a lot of purpose in that. There's a lot of call to service in that. And in many ways, I think raising a child is also a call to service, to actually like, give back and give a life to somebody else to enjoy life. But I wanted to say, on the other side of that, when it's these people who, well, I don't really want to have kids, what are they living for?
That's right. They don't know yet.
The next concert, the next Astro World concert, the next sports ball game. Oh, well, I need to go on vacation to Maui. I've never been there before. And although, if I'm like a, rapper with chains and everything, it's like, yo, that's what I live for, like
Island Boys.
It really is a sort of seductive, superficial reality that people convince themselves of. But when you really kind of break that down, that person's probably sad at the end of the day.
Maybe I've heard I've heard Jordan Peterson mention that it's a woman who wakes up at 40 and doesn't have any kids and no family, kind of there's like a realization that I may have made an error, but you can still invest in somebody else. But I
think service is the key. I think I know people who are older without kids, and they're healthy and happy when they're working on something that's
important to them,
and also like, I think, like productive for other people as well. Like, it's like being of service in some way, whether you're like a great teacher, whether you're a great doctor, or maybe you volunteer or something like this. Like, I think that's like a physiological need that we all have, is to mentor or to raise something up, whether it's a kid or whether it's something else.
A good not correlation. A good example would be, you know, how people say, well, people said to me when I was younger, and I think it's true, is that it's nicer to give a gift at Christmas than to receive sometimes, right? Like you're sometimes more excited about giving gifts than getting gifts. And sometimes you get a great gift and you're super excited about it. But the tension of Christmas when you're a parent and when you're like older is being excited about the gifts that you've chosen for the people that you love and giving that gift. And having children is that personified, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, and not just having children, like there is a pathway to it if you have missed that boat. Like I don't want to say like you're totally lost and you're devoid of any purpose and blah blah. That's not the point. Like you can define your own purpose, right? But people feel happiest. A lot of people, I think, feel happiest when they're invested in somebody that they genuinely care about from the beginning, or as close to the beginning of their life as they can be, to as long as they're around, right? And like that's important to humans, right? And it's when you become a parent, you realize that there are other people who are more important than you, right? And then you become 40 years old sitting in your garage with awesome sweaters, doing shows like this.
And I think that there's a lot to that of taking care of a kid, or taking care of a community, or taking care of, you know, the larger community, like your countrymen. And, you know, with this demoralization campaign that's probably been going on since I've been alive, slowly but surely, you know, we have all these people completely disconnected from those three different things, starting with, you know, we're a post-national state. Then next it's down to, well, you know, I'm locked in my home. There is no community anymore.
Yeah. What community, right? Yeah.
And instead of it being a community, it's more like, what are my values? Okay, I care about liberal party, so now I'm part of a cult. And like instead of having a community, it's this weird like cult that you're a part of, which is like totally impersonal and totally like the. And then number three, the one that they're really hammering home now, like the final blow, is like the family. You know,
well, they don't want that.
The connection to your parents, your grandparents, and you can't see them anymore.
Your kooky uncle who might say, I'm not getting vaccinated.
Yeah. And it's, I think there's so much that happens along with that. Cause when you don't care about those things, you know, what do you care about?
Well,
you know?
Yeah. But it's a massive.
I just wanted to say, like, to kind of bring it back to, the injections that everyone wants to get. And I'm not talking about the lethal ones. I'm talking about the mandated ones. Sometimes I hear people's attitude, and it reminds me of the I'm going to get wasted tonight attitude. You know, I'm in recovery myself, like a 12-step program. I used to, you know, whatever, I don't do it anymore. But so this is stuff that I've reflected on a lot, my own using of drugs and alcohol. And I've noticed, like, since being clean, that there's like this mentality of, there's a mentality that I had of like, you know, I'm just going to go out and do what I want. And like, maybe I took a few more drinks, but like, you know, maybe I threw up, or, you know, but I feel good the next day, or like, I feel like crap, but it's funny that I feel like crap. And I feel like there's this same mentality with the jab, with the injection, which is like, oh, whatever, like I just got to do my thing so I can, you know, go to the concert, or like I'll just get the jab and whatever, there'll be consequences and maybe I'll feel messed up, but I just got to do it, bro. And the similar thread there is, in my opinion, sometimes, especially when using drugs and alcohol is like very self-destructive, there's a suicidal sentiment there. There's a suicidal, self-destructive sentiment where you're killing yourself slowly. And of course, this isn't everyone who uses drugs and alcohol.
Well, you can be self-destructive with food. Like you can be, so like if you struggle with weight loss or weight gain or being overweight or something like that, and you feel self-destructive, you may eat a couple hundred extra calories a day because it's Christmas time and you've given yourself permission to do that. And so you're self-destructive that way. And in just the same way, the drugs and alcohol, sex as well, right? Sex is a biological imperative. You feel compelled to do that, just like you feel hungry, maybe not at the same interval, but like, you know, it's something that crops up. And
they say sex and porn addiction is like the fastest growing addiction.
Right. So now, like, and it's massively easy to access this stuff, and you don't have to, you're not consuming illicit material, not even doing anything illegal by eating too much, or even if you're an adult watching. Yeah. Right. Like how many how accessible is it? And it's very accessible, right? And so the idea that self-destruction, like self-destructive behavior, is tied just to drugs and alcohol is a misnomer, something that people are comfortable with because they've given themselves, permission to eat out at Boston Pizza. And we used to, when my wife and I used to go out, we'd get one entree and split it. And like, even then there's too many calories. If you go to like East Side Mario's or something like that and get like, one entree and split it, and you get like the salad and you get a bread thing and you get a beer or two, it's like, that's 1,000 calories, man. Like, I don't care what you say.
A crap ton of bread with like a little bit of cheese.
Yeah, a little bit of sauce. Man, the margins, those delicious 50% margins.
Oh my God.
So
I've worked at pizzerias, so I'm like very aware of how much bread is there.
You put too much cheese on that.
Is there? Yeah.
So we were talking in the green room, and you kind of alluded to this here, but people's excuses for getting the jab. And so there's 15% of people, maybe 15 to 30% of people are vocally against what's happening, the loss of our freedoms, the mandatory jabs. 15 to 30% of people roughly are for it in a similar vocally way. They're encouraging of it in Twitter and the social networks and bosses and all of the powerful institutions, corporations. They're encouraging the jab. They're mandating the jab at the behest of the Biden administration and at behest of the Trudeau administration regime, whatever you want to call it. So
accurate.
Right. So we've got 40% of people who are on the fence. They're people who wear their mask haphazardly in the Walmart. They're not going to speak out, but they're not going to really comply. And they think that's enough. You were saying like the people who were saying, I'm just going to get the jab because I have to keep my job. And I said, I think that's pretty legit. Like if you have a household and your household costs $1,500 to run every month, and say you make $1,500 and your wife makes $1,500. So without you can barely cover costs, right? Or, your partner, whatever it is. That's not a light decision. And like, you have to look at the whole situation. It would be a very, very bad situation. I'm glad that I haven't necessarily been faced with a situation like that. I don't know what I would do.
Right.
Because it is a very serious thing that there's no lawyer who's going to come in and force your job to take that mandate back. Right. Once that bell's rung, it can't be unrung. Like, so you either do what they say or you find another job. And if you find another job, maybe you don't get another job because you're on jab. And so like, are there legitimate reasons to hide amongst the crowd at this juncture? Do you think? I don't know. I don't know, because on one side, you need to run your house. On the other side, if we do this, we're going to doom our children to the same bullshit and we should be fighting for this. We should be fighting against this. I don't know what the right
absolutely. And so like my heart weeps for the people who have been put in that situation where they really, they have bills to pay, they have mouths to feed. It's not just like hey, I'm not going to let the government tell me to do this. It's like, well, I need to keep this job in order to feed my family. And it is one of those things where every situation is different. And it's not just simple to say like, oh, everyone must resist the jab. And I'm not saying that. The reason it came up in the context of a friend who reached out to me who thought some of my content, I was making him sad because it was very, insensitive and blah, blah, blah. And this is like a TikTok that takes me like 30 seconds to make, where I'm just kind of posting. But
what's interesting to me is people don't reach out to me and I mean, like a lot of times people reach out to me to tell me that my content is good and it makes them feel like they're not crazy and losing their minds. So, I mean, good. Yeah, I'm happy about that.
The person who reached out to me was a friend from like high school, from he's kind of like a childhood sort of friend. Right. And he was kind of reaching out saying, hey man, like, just so you know, I don't know, how I feel about your content. And the reason of why I brought it up was, I understand you want to take it to keep your job, but don't you want people like me to exist, to be challenging the status quo and challenging this? Like, don't you want people to be challenging these mandates? Because you yourself aren't even taking it because you feel like it's a good idea. You're taking it because you want to keep your job. Like shouldn't you appreciate what I'm trying to do in terms of like push back.
Right. And I agree with you. And I think that that's kind of the point I was trying to make. The people who are maybe not vocal about it, or the people who even have jabbed, like who have taken the jab to keep their jobs, they're not vocally saying this is wrong. Like I disagree with this thing, like with what's happening here. Work to rule campaigns, unions aren't backing people, the courts aren't backing people. And in fact, it's socially, I mean, it's social suicide to be an anti-vaxxer, right? Like you can't be an anti-vaxxer and be invited to the fancy parties, right? Like wherever those happen on Zoom these days or whatever. This is a fancy party, I suppose.
It's crazy. It's totally crazy. It's crazy how people's minds have just totally turned to mush.
Well, but it's not just turned to mush. The base programming of we farm out our sanity to other people. So your friend reaching out to you and saying, hey man, like your content crazy. That's you and your network trying to bring you back in line with their version of sanity, right? Like that's he's trying to keep you where he is.
Sure. Yeah. No, I got that.
And you're on your journey. So you're like, okay, bro, you can come with me or I'll meet you at the other end, but I'm not where you're at anymore. Right. Yeah. But we farm out our sanity though. So if you were in a school every day and you started showing up in your house coat, the other teachers would be like, are you okay? Like, are you feeling right? So and then you would change your behavior because you're drawing attention to yourself, or you wouldn't, and you'd stop going to work because you weren't okay. But you see what I'm saying? They've hotwired that mechanism, that farming out of the sanity, to keep people in line with.
I'm not sure what you mean by farming out sanity.
There's too much, like there's too many variables for people to continually check their own sanity as it applies to the world. Like if you grew up in a totally different country, like Russia or Saudi Arabia or something like that, you would see things really differently, right? And you would make decisions in a different way. And like, it's not your body that makes those decisions. It's the social cues and the interactions you have with people. So like, if you started acting wildly inappropriately for your current context, the people around you would let you know, right? That's what I mean. If your sanity's farmed out. So if you're a teacher who doesn't typically show up in his housecoat and PJs to teach, and then you started showing up in your housecoat and PJs to teach, that might seem comfortable, might seem completely normal, might seem normal on a PJ day, right? But if you started doing it every day, the other teachers would be like, whoa, what's going on here, dude? And then somebody call you into HR. So we farm out our sanity to make sure that we're in line with what's acceptable, right? And that's when you step outside of what's expected from your community, they will bring you back. And if you don't come back, you're outside of the community now, right? And that's bad, because if this community disowns you, right? Let's say Guelph disowns me. They're like, we don't like you anymore. Get out. I'm on my own, cold and afraid. And like wolves could get me, bears could get me, anything could get me. I could be dead. That'd be that, right? And it's a very basic primal thing. But if your community rejects you, you're on your own. Everything relies on me now. I don't have a community to rely on. And so I could die.
I feel like the term is peer pressure. It's, it's kind of like pressure from your peers to step in line, to fall in line.
Yeah.
Social conformity.
Yep.
But that's definitely how I took, like, them reaching out to me like, hey, you should really follow the rules, man.
Yeah.
Like
that's exactly how they meant it.
That's kind of how I read it. Yeah. But I don't know. It's isn't it interesting to kind of have been following politics before all this happened? Like I feel like that really puts a really interesting perspective on everything that's going on. Because it's like, man, you really just think this is all just about a virus, eh? Like, damn.
I've had people say, just wait until January. If they don't open it up in January.
Oh man.
And like, it's people like I have family members, like we have Sunday dinner. I have family members who like try and needle me about things sometimes. And it's fine. Like, you can needle me, man. It's cool. I don't mind.
They don't realize that you swim through that shit every day. It's like, do you really want to have a conversation with me about this? Like,
I have anonymous people who like, who try and needle me, and it's like, I've grown a very thick skin. But they try and it's the same kind of thing. They're trying to figure out. Well, they don't necessarily know what I think, but they know that I think that all of this is not right. And so they try and make, allusions that,
oh, so you don't trust like anything from the government?
right, yeah,
They're like crazy.
yeah. Not quite like that,
yeah.
but almost.
I've learned to check myself when I'm with my family specifically.
Yeah.
And you know what really irritates me? I make an effort to not bring it up. I try not to bring it up. And then whenever they bring it up, I'm always just like,
it's
sure, I just bring it up
listen,
because right? Like that's the allowed to talk about. That's not political.
So
that's just
this happened during
that I go ahead.
This happened during Trump as well. Like, so like people would
Yes.
be like, we can't talk politics here. And then somebody would be like, oh, how about that thing? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
that somebody else did.
Cheating on Trump is not political, right?
Or like just tangential, like just not quite politics, but almost there. And then like the next thing would be to make fun of Trump. And then it's like, okay, so you guys are allowed to shit talk Trump the whole time, but I'm not allowed to say anything about anything. And then, so,
it's quite like ingenious how they've done it, where it's like being a centrist is being the enemy in a sense. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's saying, like, that's not political. It's like, it is. It so is.
So political.
So is political. Like, come on.
The only reason they could do it is because it's political.
Yeah.
No, it's imagine a time we're living in Canada and saying, we really should listen to both sides of this. Is seen as like horrifically awful, you terrible right-wing person.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true.
It's such a weird.
I believe in questioning things. It's like, why do you have to be so controversial all the time?
it's so like, yes,
bruh, I'm just asking questions.
There's been a lot of heart attacks and myocarditis lately. Oh, that happens all the time. No, it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, it definitely
doesn't happen all the time. It's never happened before. This is crazy what's happening. But they pretend like it is. Anyways, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, there was, my friend sent me this video about brainwashing recently. And I don't know if I told this story, but it's Pavlov's dog and that whole study of he rang the bell and then they would salivate. Classical conditioning is the term from Psychology 101.
Nice.
But there was it wasn't a study that happened, but essentially it turned into a study where Pavlov was training all these dogs and doing psychological experiments on all these dogs. I don't remember the name of the German city. I don't know. But there was a flood. There was a big flood. And it was horrible because these dogs were about to be drown alive. They're about to drown. But in the last minute, one of the lab workers came and rescued all these dogs. But what they noticed after is the dogs, presumably because of the trauma, presumably because of the fear, they forgot everything. They forgot like all the things that they had taught these dogs in the labs, like training them to do this, that, or the other.
Are they sure they were the same dogs?
I believe so. Okay. But like, if you look at the context of what we just went through over the past 2 years, it's like all this fear, all this lockdown, all this trauma. It's like, we've just forgotten everything. Like, we've forgotten what it means to live in a free country. We've forgotten what it means to like live in a community. We've forgotten what it was like when we got sick before and we didn't panic and think everyone was going to die for getting a flu during flu season. Like it's not even a flu. It's all been like erased, presumably.
If you just
and you might say, oh, well, we're smarter than dogs. And it's like, yeah, but we also have these like around our collars all the time. Like,
beep, beep, beep.
It's
yeah, man. No, I agree with you. There's something to that. Well, I always say that we're like goldfish. Like 2 weeks, when they say 2 weeks to flatten the curve, you were having problems remembering. You were referencing Christmas. You were like, I don't know if it's this Christmas or last Christmas before the pandemic. My daughter said, when did the pandemic start? Was it 2019 or 2020? She said it was COVID-19, right? So it was in 2019. And I was like, I couldn't tell you now, right? And I'm like, Jeepers creepers. So we are like goldfish, and our brains are so malleable that within, I mean, the
pandemic started long. 8 years ago. 8 years since it started.
It's been since 2015.
No, it was December 2019. When it started.
So it was 2020, March 2020.
Started in March. This March.
You're very choppy. You're very choppy. So I may
Am I
actually.
still here? Am
Okay,
I
you're
still
here now. Okay, good. I was gonna kill the show right there because I have to go anyway. But let's say goodbye because this was a really good chat. We usually finish it off a little bit better, but you went all choppy there, so I blame Greg for that.
It's okay.
But Greg, where can they find you? And final thoughts.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Greg Wycliffe, Instagram, Greg Wycliffe, one word, Twitter and TikTok at GWDDUB. Final thoughts. I think that's pretty well it. I had another thought. I think it went away though. But thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, that happens, man. You can check my stuff out at candidapoly.com, at candidareport.co. That's my scratch pad where I put all of my ideas, et cetera, and at speakingmoistly.co, where I've got our back catalog and all of the other interviews I've done over the past little while. And thanks for joining us. I'll see you, or we'll see you next time.